Eddie, so in the folklore lectures, one of the themes was printed word and orality, telling the joke orally, then put into print, joke books, and then making back. I mean, more than anything else, I think that's true for Jewish humor, the back and forth between being told and being
Right, there's no question.
I
think that a lot of these joke books, the people who wrote them didn't actually write them. They collected them.
Right.
And they collected them from having heard them elsewhere. They may have stylized them to a certain degree. But for instance, two of these older joke books were produced by Isaac Mayer Dick, a very well-known Yiddish author.
From Vilna.
Right, from Vilna. I doubt he wrote all the jokes.
Right.
He heard them.
Right.
So, but they get collected. They get collected in this way. Sam Lipton, who wrote this, sort of labor joke book, Reite Pfefferlach, red peppers. These are probably things that he heard in the shop. And then when you have magazines like Der Grosser Kundis, you have professional humorists who are on the staff, but they also, and other Yiddish newspapers did this as well, they would have joke contests and have people send in their best jokes, and they would print them, and so there were occasions where the writers would begin writing for the papers.
Since you mentioned the Große Kundes, I know that one of your research topics is the history of Yiddish cartoons, or
Right.
how do you call them? Cartoons?
Yeah, cartoons.
Cartoons. And are they jokes? Are they?
Some of them, yeah. It's interesting that when Yiddish cartoons first started, or when they first started printing cartoons in Yiddish, what they initially did was they took cartoons from other language newspapers and reprinted them with Yiddish captions, and often the humor didn't work very well. But once they started publishing original cartoons, they were really illustrated jokes. And one of the odd things is the captions would become very long. It's as if Yiddish cartoonists didn't understand that a caption should be relatively short.
Well, as someone who does translating, you realize that Yiddish takes a lot longer to say something than English does.
Right. But these would have an image, and then a whole dialogue below it. It wasn't simply the translation. It was just it was a joke. They wanted to tell a joke, and they figured we should have an image with it. So that's what they did. So in this way also, the jokes that people were telling on the streets suddenly had this new visual component. And that was something, in the late 19th century that was really new in Yiddish culture. And from there, cartoons grew into a whole kind of industry.
There are a lot of theories of Jewish humor.
Right.
I sort of like the one where in Eastern Europe, the Jews would make jokes. What was important was that the Jew got the last word,
right?
Got the punchline, even if he were physically abused and harmed during the telling of the joke. But in America, American Jews already felt more courageous, so that a rabbi could make fun of a priest and a minister and not worry about the consequences.
Right, yeah, the context is important. And there's a well-known Yiddish anecdote from Eastern Europe. It goes, when you tell a peasant a joke, he laughs 3 times. When you tell the joke, when you explain the joke, and when he understands it. When you tell a nobleman a joke, he laughs twice. When you tell the joke and when you explain it, he never actually understands it. And when you tell a Russian army officer a joke, he only laughs once. When you tell the joke, he wouldn't permit you to explain it, and he wouldn't understand it if you did anyways. But when you tell a Jew a joke, he interrupts you and says he's already heard it, and by the way, he could tell it better.
Right. I've heard the joke, and there are several interpretations of that joke, on how that should be. It becomes very interesting when American Jewish immigrants come, and there's a new category of Jewish humor, dialect jokes.
Right.
Which actually the exhibit now at YIVO also touches upon as well, a kind of Jewish humor which you didn't have in Eastern Europe, and it's designed for another generation.
Right. Although, I think to a certain degree you did have it in Eastern Europe. In Polish and certainly in German you had it, where you had what I guess you could call Mauschlin booklets, where stories and jokes written in a kind of Yiddish German dialect. But here, it became part of vaudeville. It became extremely popular in what happened when large numbers of Jews began emigrating to the United States, beginning in the 1880s. American entertainers saw this, and at the time, American comedy was built entirely on ethnic stereotypes. Blackface is the best known of these. And obviously all of these today are completely offensive, but stage performers also imitated the Irish, they imitated Italians, Chinese, every ethnic group, bore the brunt of this kind of thing. And when the Jew showed up, they said, oh, there's this new group speaking accented English with their own language, we can make fun of them as well. So this stage Jew was created. And you had all kinds of performers who performed as the stage Jew. They would put on a beard and a hat, black coat, and they would speak with Yiddish accents, and they would be peddlers. They would try to cheat people. A lot of it was very offensive. Just after the turn of the century, when you had a lot of American-born children of immigrants entering the entertainment industry, they saw this and thought, well, we could do a better job acting as Jews than these people can. So they took it over, and they began performing as stage Jews. And interestingly enough, Irving Berlin wrote dozens of songs, of novelty songs for these performers. And they were popular, and they all, not all of them, but most of them were sung with Yiddish accents. They would throw a Yiddish word in occasionally. This is the first time that Yiddish becomes a comic foil in American comedy culture. And it's something that remained all the way through Mel Brooks and really until today.
So you're talking about stage humor, but when folklore comes into this, in the issue of, and you get this all the time, when Jews tell a joke in Yiddish humor, for Jews, it's okay.
Right,
but when the non-Jews are making fun of Yiddish,
Sure, well, this is in-group, out-group humor, an issue with that. That's normal. One thing that I can mention is, as far as the folk creating something, there's an interesting article in, I believe it's from 1910, from the Forverts, which explains how entertainment was created in the Catskills. Prior to the sort of Jewish invasion of the Catskills in the 1890s and the first decade of the 20th century, there were a lot of hotels, but there was never entertainment. And when Jews started going there, for some reason they needed to be entertained. It's not really clear why. They needed this. And what started was people, they would be hanging out on the porches of these hotels, and they would begin to sing songs and just sort of to while away the time. And someone got the idea to perform a mock wedding. And they would perform these mock weddings where the groom was a woman and the bride was a man. The badchen was I don't know if you spoke about badchonim already.
No, I didn't.
But the wedding jester was the master of ceremonies, and they would have klezmorim, and this was a completely amateur performance initially. When Yiddish theater performers heard about it, they immediately interjected themselves and they said, we need to do this.
This is our field.
Right, and it became professionalized. Right. But that's allegedly how entertainment, Jewish entertainment began in this region.